Hey there, it's Linda in Belize. Are you thinking about buying property here? Here's a list of things to know about. Number one, stamp tax. There's an 8% fee charged to foreigners buying property. It's kind of like a transfer tax, and even locals pay an amount, which is 5%. Number two, legal fees. You should budget 2% for a lawyer on your purchase transaction. Some people tell you that you could just use a closing company. This isn't something I recommend for many reasons. First, a lot of times the closing agent is with the brokerage themselves, and it's not a third party that's representing you as the buyer where your attorney will. So here, even more important than in North America, I always recommend, and so does Keller Williams, using a real estate lawyer for your transaction. Number three, in Belize, there is no MLS, so that means you can't see all available properties easily like you do in North America. No Zillow, no Kijiji, none of those types of websites. So if you want to find property, you often have to go into all the different realtors, and there's tons of them. So the other option, you could drive around everywhere to see what's available, but what I do recommend doing instead is using a buyer's agent. For example, I'm here in Mahogany Bay Village right now, and there are developer lots available, there's some houses for sale, and there's some resale lots. All of these are available through different brokerages. So working with a buyer agent makes you aware of many different options available at different price points. I have a lot right now listed for $165, for example. Number four, how do you buy the property? Do you put it in your personal name? Do you put it in a Belize company, in your US company? Those are things you need to figure out before you find a property to buy. I had a client recently that we found a great beachfront lot in the Placencia area, and a couple of weeks after the purchase, they decided to put it in their US company. And that actually delayed closing. Despite having over a month available, our attorney had to get central bank approval, because if your corporation in the US is buying the property, there is extra paperwork that needs to be done because the central bank has to approve that purchase. So talk to your accountant and your lawyer, both in the US and in Belize, before you find a property to purchase, because some sellers may not be willing to amend your closing date. Number five, check out different areas in Belize before deciding where you want to be. There's pros and cons to every area, and everyone's different. I lived in San Pedro Ambergris Caye for 2 years, and I love it here. I'm here right now for a week. It's very busy. There's lots of amenities and stores. I've done a lot of shopping for home goods that I can't necessarily find in Placencia, at least not the same selection. But it is also very busy and congested. I also don't like the fact that we can't have cars. I love having my AC on a hot summer day, and golf carts, although they're a novelty on holiday, they definitely are bad on my back. So that's one of the reasons I really love living in Placencia. Placencia is more of a beach destination versus a diver's destination, because San Pedro is closer to the reef. It's right outside. So if you're a diver, San Pedro might be best for you. But Placencia, if you're a beach person, might be better. Hopkins is another area a lot of expats settle, and it's got the same kind of beaches as Placencia, but it's a little bit more affordable. So if you're thinking of checking out different parts of Belize, I would recommend doing that before you decide where to buy. And my Belize tours show you these different areas, along with meeting different people who've settled in each of the areas. My next tour is planned for August, and if you have other dates in mind, just reach out, because if you want to confirm your spot on an upcoming tour, I can do that after we have a video call. Number six, if you want to buy a property and rent it out when you're not here, that's something a lot of people would like to do to help cover costs. However, what you may not be aware of is that you need a hotel license to do this. In Edmonton, where I'm from in Canada, we have many different licenses. For a Airbnb short-term rental property, it's just a business license, fairly simple to do with a couple requirements. Whereas in Belize, there's one class. Anything that has tourists staying in it, whether it's short or long-term, needs a hotel license. So the costs of doing this need to be factored in, as well as the time. So there are people that can help you with this process, and there's many requirements, things like fire inspections, environmental inspections, some things that need to be done annually, semi-annual, etc. So it is great to get someone to help you with this process, but it's just also important to factor in before you buy a property. Number seven, financing a property in Belize. If you're a foreigner, you can't get a bank loan on a property, but you might be able to get seller financing. Now, there's a couple things about that. First of all, if it's a completed home or condo, oftentimes the seller will only be willing to do something based on an offer that you make when they want to sell. So it's also typically very short term. So they might say, hey, I'll finance you for a year or two, or maybe up to 5 years at a higher interest rate than you might see otherwise at a bank in the US. Now, having said that, of course, US rates are a lot higher than they used to be. Now, if you are thinking of financing a property, land is a thing you can finance, but the build itself is not. So if you buy land with a developer, oftentimes you can get financing, like in Mahogany Bay or in Naya. But the one thing to factor in about that is that if you're financing a property, you don't have title to it until it's paid off. That doesn't necessarily matter, but one thing it does mean is that you don't have a vote in an HOA if there is one in the community. So if you want to have a say in what's happening in the community and you finance, just know that that is not going to be the case. Number 8, availability of material and supplies. Well, Belize is a small country, so we don't have near the amount of stores or selection of products that we would find anywhere really in North America. Now, there are different stores in Belize that are really good at certain things, but they're in different areas of the country. We live in Placencia, but we often travel to Spanish Lookout, which is a really good Mennonite farming community, and they have tons of building material that I don't see anywhere else in the country. But Belize City has tons of department stores, and San Pedro has some really good home stores. So depending where you are in Belize, you can find things in different areas, but a lot of times people also want to bring things in from the US because you have way more selection. You can get Amazon here, but it's not going to be the next day. It'll probably take you about 2 to 3 weeks. Number 9 is related to number 8. So this is about customs and duty. If you get a quote from a shipper to bring things into Belize, that's just one aspect of what you're going to pay. You also have to pay customs and duty. And you need a customs broker generally to manage that when the goods come into Belize City. And then you have to handle shipping from Belize City to your destination, be it San Pedro, Placencia, or elsewhere. Now, I have, since being here, found a better option. I do use Belizean Queen, who consolidates all my Amazon and anything else that I ship into Houston. And basically, they have a set fee based on the size of the box. So for a small box, I pay $30 US, which includes shipping and duty customs charges, as well as home delivery on the mainland. So the deliveries come right to my house in Placencia. When I was in San Pedro, what happened is they would ship them into the water taxi or Tropic Air, and you would just pick them up from there. So Belizean Queen is a great option for consolidating Amazon and other small items. But if you have big pallets of goods you're bringing in, then you definitely need a customs broker to help you with that. We've actually shipped some things in from China, and the customs broker was helpful that way. But even then, we had fees for the Panama Canal that we weren't aware of. So there's always charges that are above what you might expect. So anytime you can buy local, make sure you do so. Number 10 is about building a home. I've built many homes in Canada, in Edmonton, with no problems at all. There's a nice warranty that we have. It's 1 year on everything in the home, and they do regular inspections to make sure things are good. And then after that, we have Alberta Home Warranty, which covers up to 10 years for structural items. Here in Belize, however, a couple of the builders that I know about in Mahogany Bay, for example, only include a 6-month warranty. And there's tons of things you find after the 6-month period that go wrong. And I could go through probably an hour alone of things I've heard about different houses that have had problems and things needing to be replaced in a way shorter time frame than we're used to in North America. So one thing you can do, first of all, is talk to people who have used the builder you're considering. Now, in some cases, people have a great reputation initially, but then they take on too much work and the quality of the build goes way down because they had to hire new workers that might not be as qualified. So I always recommend checking someone who just moved into a newly completed home, as well as people who built in the past. The other thing you can do is look for an already completed home. That means someone else had to go through the headache of building, and you can just look to make sure things are up to par. The only thing about that is you might not find the perfect house for you, but you can also do renovations that might cost a lot less than building. The other thing to note is that building costs in Belize have went up substantially in the last few years. Obviously, cost of materials everywhere have went up, but in Mahogany Bay, for example, there are tons of Facebook posts about quotes that they were given initially and what happened after they closed on their land. So that's another thing to be cognizant of when you're buying land, is that prices might not be the same when you decide to start your build. Now, the other thing to factor in when you're building is In some developments, you're forced to use specific builders, so you don't have much choice. Other developments, you have open availability, and there's pros and cons to both. If there's specific builders that have great reputations, maybe that's good that people aren't picking other builders. But if you don't really have a choice you want, that could be a limiting factor when you're buying in a certain area. So always check for completed homes before you decide whether you want to build. When I started this video, I thought it would be a top 5 list, but it was very easy to get to 10 items. If you're looking for a buyer's agent here in Belize, I'd be happy to help. And if you just want to ask questions initially, look at my YouTube memberships. If you get the membership, you actually get access to a 1-hour video call with me each month until you cancel. So that's one way you can ask a ton of questions without having to come down. And I can do that also in person when you're in Belize. So if you have an upcoming trip, make sure you reach out, and I hope to see you soon.